Hi, welcome to the July 2nd, 2021 Club Cubase live stream. I'm going to do a quick audio test to make sure things are going through as expected on my end, and then we'll get started in just a couple moments. Hi, welcome to... Okay, everything sounds fine on my monitoring computer. If for some reason my audio gets cut out in the middle, just I know people have emailed me at clubcubase at Steinberg. .de if for some reason my audio gets disconnected. So, but my name is Greg Undo. I'll be the host for the live stream today. And if you have not attended a live stream before, you could submit questions in the live chat field or simply email questions in advance to clubcubase at steinberg.de. So my name, again, is Greg Undo. I work with Yamaha Corporation of America as a product specialist, primarily focusing on Steinberg products. I'm presenting from I'm in the United States and presenting from outside of Washington, D.C. area in Alexandria, Virginia. If you are watching the live stream and attending it live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us who you are and where you're from. So as you ask questions, we could simply, if you want to indicate which version of Cubase that you have, so you can say, and which operating system. So you can say I'm running Cubase Elements 11 on Mac OS or Cubase Pro 11 on Windows 10. That information will be helpful. And like many of you during these times, my family's at home, so I may get interrupted. We're on the brink of a holiday weekend here, so my whole family is kind of at home, so I'll apologize in advance for any interruptions. Just a couple people I would like to give a quick shout out to. So we have two people that can function as moderators. So we have Agent K and Jazz Dude. So appreciate them for their moderation skills. And also another wonderful resource outside of the official Steinberg channels for relevant information for Cubase and Steinberg products and computer-based music production. You could check out the Cubase Nation Discord, and Jazz Dude organizes and contributes a lot to that, so it's a wonderful resource. We will probably shortly after the live stream have a index of all the topics covered, and that should be posted in the top, pinned to the top of the comments field. And so we will do that, but we also have Jan from CubaseIndex.com who has a site where you could actually search for any topics that have been covered in a live stream. And I'll just take a quick moment because my son's knocking on the door. Bear with me just for a moment. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so we see Rob from Tarpon Springs, Florida. He's thanking us for continuing these hangouts. So his question is, please show how to create a VCA channel from selected channels. Can you select the channels you want included on the mix console? So let's go ahead and start with that. So let's say if I wanted to create a VCA for like these three tracks here. So if we wanted to do it from the mix console or from the project window, the easiest way to do this is once we have the channel selected, is you could right click and add a VCA fader to the selected channel. So now at this point, if I just wanted to take those particular tracks, So once again, or if you wanted to do it from the mix console or directly from the channels here, the selected channels, you could also, as we go to add track, you'll see add VCA track, VCA fader to selected channels, and that will automatically do the routing for you. All right, and Rob also has a question. What does freeze trim do? And this is kind of an automation parameter. So let's say I will be in trim automation mode. So I will come over here. Let's just grab my fader and I'll go to my automation panel. And you can do this by going to hitting F6. So once we're in trim mode, we could just kind of come over here. So, okay, so let's say if I have some automation on this particular track, I will just come over here and I'll just pan this in the center for now. But let's say we'll just enable automation. Okay, so we have some automation data that's been written. And if we want to do trim automation, and what trim automation, once we have this mode selected, what that's going to allow us to do is to just kind of bring everything down a little bit. So let's say I just bring everything kind of down here. And, you know, once we have kind of those, you know, once we have the, you know, the trim automation, so if we kind of just brought down, you know, the trim, what you could do then is just to kind of freeze the trim, and that will, so as we move the fader down, it could kind of bring down all of the faders. And instead of having kind of the original automation point and the trim, kind of the new automation value, that will kind of coalesce the two levels of automation so that the automation reflects automatically what's going on, you know, directly with the as we do the automation. So as we've trimmed it down, maybe just like taking it down a dB or two, but retain the automation curves, that those would automatically be reflected and kind of coalesce between those two. So let's say, so if we have this set to manually, so here you could kind of see like the two different automation points, and you could say, okay, now on leaving trim mode, when I come over here, let's say I just go out of trim mode, that you could see kind of the changes in the automation. So that just kind of basically embeds the automation trims that you've done in trim mode to the event. Okay, we see John Costigan. It's wonderful to see you on the Zoom meetup, and we're glad that Jazz Dude can make it as well, and Tim Weinheimer. Okay, so we have Christopher from Columbia, South Carolina. Okay, so, and he just updated from Cubase 6.5 and had not used it in a long time. It says, glad to be back. Thanks for joining our live stream. So we're glad to have you back. Okay, so we see, and occasionally my chat field will move and get behind. All right, so we see Uno Memento from Finland. And he's just mentioning, luckily I have 4 screens so you can watch the Cubase Hangouts, and I keep the Cubase on one screen, and one screen has the European Champion football match. All right, so it sounds like a good plan. All right. And one of his screens is for news. Okay. All right, so we have Ken from Norway. Okay, so we have a question. Hey, Greg, can you explain how to import a mixing template I have with plugins, etc., into an open session to mix? So if you have everything kind of set up, so say, okay, we have a mixing template, you know, what you're able to do is one easy way is just taking an existing project, and let's import tracks from project. So let's say I want it to go to this particular project here, and I'll just say open, and then I could select all, and I could import everything, but I don't want maybe the events and parts. So this way I could have the channel and the inspector settings. So all of my plugins, if you're doing this as kind of like a mix template, you may not want to include automation, but you have that choice. And now you could just come over here and import all of the tracks. And so that's a fairly easy way. Another way to do it, if you want to take like a number of audio tracks, I could just come over here and say, I wanted these particular audio tracks. Is if you go into the full screen mix console, you'll see this little drop down menu, and then you could save selected channels and load selected channels into another project. So if I wanted to save these selected channels, and now at this point, I have moved all these completely differently. So now if I wanted to import or load selected channels, I could just come over here, and there's my VMX file, and everything will automatically be kind of recalled just by doing that. So that's another method of kind of having different mix templates. Okay, so we see from Ron, he's learning a lot of things to improve my workflow. Nuendo here. Big thanks to Greg and Steinberg. All right, that's great. All right, we see Taylor Sapp from Pine Grove, Pennsylvania. We see Jan from CubaseIndex.com. So we see from Taylor Sapp, Flux is an awesome instrument. Where can I get a full video tutorial on each parameter? If you want, for Tuesday's live stream, maybe we could take a look at Flux in more detail. So if you wanted to email me just as a brain cramp email reminder, be happy to do that. But yeah, there's, always explore the built-in instruments, because they are, very high quality. And sometimes I see people just going out buying the same instrument for a lot of money. And it's like, oh, you could do that, with one of the included instruments, and you just didn't think to explore that. All right, so we have Omar from France, and Stefan from Sweden, and Benjamin from Texas. Okay, so we have a question. Need help with the surround sound setup with audio connections and set up control room with the surround sound in 5.1. Okay, so if we're doing like a 5.1 setup, what you want to do is let's go to our audio connections. First thing you want to do is to go to your outputs and just have a 5.1 output. So here you could define, so we see our left, right, center, LFE, left and right surround. And while this may seem counterintuitive, just come over here and choose not connected. So we want to have that 5.1 out. We want all of the tracks to be routed to the 5.1 out as opposed to the stereo out. Now, when we go into our audio connections for the control room, what you want to do is, I'll just delete a monitor setup. So let me go ahead and I'll remove monitor 4, but I'm going to add my monitor. And instead of this monitor being a stereo setup, we just make it a 5.1 setup. And this is where you could actually define the 6 outputs for your audio interface or your converter that is sending to each of the channels. So that's really kind of all the setup that you need to do. And once you have that done, the control room is beautiful for working for 5.1, because you could have, your master volume be for all 5.1, all 6 channels in your 5.1 mix. Okay. So we have Mike checking in from Empire State and Matt Elliston from London joining us again with Filter Freak. All right. And Daryl from Oakland. All right. So we have a question from, all right, from Elena. Hi, Greg. Can you explain about return channels, A and B for delay and reverb? So let's say if I wanted to take, let me just take. All right. So, we could have our. Okay, so we say return channel. So, once we come over here, let's say I have my okay, so let's say if I wanted to come here and I'll take my snare track here. And I wanted to add this. I'll just do a quick loop in this section. All right. So if I wanted to send this out to two different sources, all you have to do is you could come over here and you can say you want to add an effects channel track. So let's say I wanted to add this to a reverb. So let's say to the Revelation. And let's say if I wanted to add another effects channel, let's say maybe a delay. And I'll make this. All right, so how we would control the level of these is when we go to our sends. So at this point, we go to our snare track. All right, and I think I just may have added the... So I'm going to select the snare track here. And then as soon as I add an effects channel, let's say our delay, we can now say, okay, I just want the delay. And then we could blend the amount of the effect with the original sound just by extending that. So, and then these same effects, once they've been added, can be used on multiple other channels. So if I wanted to take my kick drum and route it to the same reverb or to the same delay, I don't have to instantiate a new plugin as sends. So, and then Elena, when you say, about return channels A and B, so they're not necessarily labeled as A and B, but that's kind of, so you could have up to 8 different effects sends per channel. But let me know if I misunderstood your question. Okay, so we just see a question from Ron. I hope there will be an option in the next update of Cubase and Nuendo to automatically patch new tracks in ascending order. I think it would be a time saver, especially for people like me who record live. So let's say if I wanted to come here, I'll go to, let's say, I've had to do this for live use a lot. So let's just say I have, 50, like here I have 16 mono inputs on my source. I'll do a new project. So there's some little handy shortcuts that we could do for this. So let's say, okay, I want to do, let's say 16 tracks. Okay, so when we go to look at these, and I'll just go to my audio connections, I have 16 mono ins. Okay, so if I wanted to change the inputs here so that they're sequential instead of all being routed to the same input, I will just select all the tracks, and I think if you hold down Shift, that now as we do this, you'll see that it's mono in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So that will just sequentially add all of your inputs, and you can do that for outputs as well. So just hold down Alt or Option plus Shift and change the top one to the very first one, and that way you could subsequently add, where you don't have to, assign each of the tracks, manually. One other tip that's great for live use, if you're naming tracks, you could just kind of come over here. If you type in the first field and hit the tab key, that will just take you to the next field so that you could just kind of enter in like the track list names very quickly as well. So let me know if will help you, Ron. But I think that will help. All right. So great to see that Soren in Sweden could join us for the live stream. All right. Okay, so we have a question. Hey, Greg, I'm running Cubase 11, Mac Big Sur. I made a template and everything is perfect, but when I restart my program, my locators are smaller in length, causing me to resize my window constantly. Okay, so let's say if I come here, let's store this as a template, and I will just set up my left and right locators accordingly. So let's say okay, so I'm going to save this as a template. All right, and we'll just call this CV to gate. Okay, so we have our locators. So I'm just going to go ahead and move the locators to a different position, and let's do a new project. And we'll come over here, CV to gate as our folder. Do you want to activate the project? We'll activate it. So it looks like everything, the locators were saved with my template. I wonder, so, check to see if, maybe if the time display has maybe changed, like if it's a bars and beats representation versus seconds, where it may look like it's different, but it looks like it's kind of preserved it to me. But let me know if I did something differently than you have been doing. All right, so we have a question. Sorry I'm late. There's no need to apologize. We're not in school. How long is the current Cubase offers on for? So currently there's a big Cubase summer promotion on for. I think it's 40% off for a lot of different Cubase products. So I think it's going through August. I thought I saw August 11th, but you could check just to make sure. But yeah, it's a wonderful promotion that probably a lot of people have been waiting for. So, and we see Jazz Dudes adding more Flux tutorials to the probably to the Cubase Nation Discord. Thank you for that. All right. We see Sable Winters able to join us. We missed you on the Zoom meetup. Wasn't the same without you, but we're glad that you could join us today. I think Jazz Dude is looked it up and says it's until August 1st, so July 1st to August 1st for the Cubase promotion. See Daryl's updated to Cubase 11 Pro over the weekend. So we see, hi Greg, can you briefly go over the new Cubase 11 frequency EQ plugin abilities compared to Cubase 10.5? I'm thinking of upgrading. Okay, so let's take a quick look. So one of the big new components that was added was going to be the ability of, multiple side chains. So you can have 8 independent side chains for each band that we have, and the ability to have something that people kind of weren't expecting in kind of a built-in plugin. But if we wanted to come over here, let's just, so we could not only just, so some of the other differences that we're going to have is the ability that each band could also be placed into dynamic mode, so that we could apply dynamics just on this particular frequency, and how this kind of different than a typical, typical multi-band type compressor is, you have the ability to just switch, and say, okay, I just wanted to adjust the Q. So you could add just the dynamic stages here and say you wanted to really compress like those particular frequencies. So it can get to be very surgical. And as we do this, it can not only do stereo, but you could have independent compression for like the sides. So if you wanted to expand the sides and compress the lows, and again with different settings. And if you wanted to see kind of like everything laid out like on a band by band basis, you could come over here and see the EQ frequencies as well as the dynamics, all directly here. And then once you go to your side chain and, you come over here, each of the bands can have its own independent side chain. So think of it as like a super powerful, dynamic EQ that's going to be included. It could be a bit more surgical than a traditional multi-band compressor. All right, so we have Barry Williams from Trinidad and Tobago. All right, thanks for joining us, and great to see Loretta from Vancouver again. And we have the Monk Beats from Italy and Mr. Morpheus joining. Right. Okay, so we have a question from Michael Pierce. Great to see you Tuesday on the Zoom meetup. All right. I guess he doesn't have a question. All right. And we see Cap Tenergy Music. Okay, so we have a question. I have a plug-in, a brick wall limiter in Insert on one of my monitors. Outputs number 2. Is it possible to assign its threshold to an external controller in generic remote windows? Let's take a look. So let's say if we're in, I assume this is in the control room area. Let's go to monitors. And I'll just put in a quick brick wall limiter. Okay, so let's say we want to adjust our threshold for this. Okay, so let's take a look at our generic remote. Okay, so here we could say I want it this particular parameter, and let's take a look at VST control room. And we go to inserts. All right, so we see these are for kind of the global. All right, let me just try from. So it looks like we could do the global, but maybe not the, just on one of the monitoring paths. So I'll just take a look at it again here. So it looks like we could do kind of the global inserts, but maybe not the particular monitor inserts from through generic remote. But let's see if there's another. Maybe if I could come over here through maybe a quick control. So let's see if I do a learn. Okay, so if we have this set up through a quick control, so once I have this quick control set up, you could click on learn. So it's not a generic remote. But now you could just, so if you click on the learn function here and move the parameter, you could assign that to a quick control for a particular track, and then you could control that through an external CC controller. So give that a try, Monk Beats. Okay. All right. So, question from Loretta: could you please review the audio connections difference in Nuendo 1102 as there is no output tab? How to set up external instruments and control room? Many thanks. So, I'll go ahead and just open up Nuendo 11. So, I think it's going to be identical to Cubase, but I'll just make sure. Okay, so we're now in Nuendo, and we'll go to the audio connections. And as you can see, it's just the output, group effects, external instruments. So they're all kind of identical. You know, I think that if you're on Windows 7, these may be kind of, if that's the case, you may just have to kind of click in this area. So there's maybe kind of hidden visually with an arrow theme. That's one thing that kind of pops to mind, but it's all kind of the same functionality in Cubase and Nuendo for that. So let me know if I did something different, Loretta. Okay, so we had a question from George Brighter. Hi, Greg. Thanks for the tip on how to get my project window to fit the screen properly in the external monitor. How would I be able to play the audio through the external monitor? So if you have the audio connected via HDMI, if you want to use that as a quick reference test, you'd probably have to go to your studio setup. And we'll switch your audio system, and it could be going to like built-in audio. And then once you have the built-in audio here, you may just have to choose that you're going to listen to the audio through the HDMI output as opposed to the audio interface. So you would have to physically kind of switch the audio interface to do that properly. So I would, just switch that to, if you're on Windows, you could do generic low latency ASIO driver. On Mac, you could do built-in audio. And then you could route the audio out through HDMI. I don't think DisplayPort may route the audio. I could be mistaken. I haven't tried yet. So... Okay, so we have a question from George Brighter. Also, I need some instruction on how to download the Cubase 11 upgrade. It looks like the instruments are a separate install. So yeah, the components have been kind of broken down in the Steinberg download assistant. So once you have, so we'll go to the Steinberg, because some people, who lived in areas that didn't have fast internet access, didn't want to download one single 20 gigabyte file. So we kind of broke it down into different stages of the update. But one trick that you could do, I'll show you here. And of course, doing an update as we do this. But if you just go to you select your Cubase 11 Pro, you could just click on Install All, and that will just kind of go through and install everything. But if you have some of the content already from previous versions, you may not need to reinstall that. So instead of you can pick and choose what actual elements you want. But if you're not sure, you can just click on the Install All, and that will simplify the process for you. All right, so just see, this was a suggestion made last week. So it says, Greg, do you think it would be useful when you read a question that you also read the YouTube time we see in the chat column? It would be easier to follow all your answers live. So when I don't see the time, maybe as host, I don't see the time in the chat column. So I would do it, but I don't see the actual time of when the questions are asked. But if someone knows if I could do that as host, I'd be happy to do it. I just only see the questions. I don't see the time when those questions were asked in the chat field. And I looked at kind of multiple computers just to make sure, and different web browsers. All right, so I just see a comment from Elena's question. So it just sends them 1 and 2 together on one channel. Thanks. Yeah. So that's really all it is. So you could just kind of have, up to 8 independent sends. All right, so we have a question from Michael Pierce. Could a feature request be for the tab control when naming tracks to also work on the mixer window? So let's say if I come here, I could pass it along. I'll just try to make sure. Yeah, so I'll pass that along as a feature request so that we could kind of have consistent behavior between the two like that. But I don't think it's the end of the world if it can't do it in the mix console. But all right, so we see a question from Peter Brown. Hi, Greg. Is Cubase 6.5 also considered Cubase 6.5 Artist? So generally there's 3 tiers of sold versions of Cubase. and two that are sold as or that are considered OEMs, like that come bundled with audio interfaces. So with third party hardware, you can get Cubase LE, and with Steinberg and Yamaha products, you can get Cubase AI. The difference is AI is more advanced integration. On the Cubase realm, we had Cubase Elements, Artist, and then prior to Cubase 8, it was just called like Cubase, and that's probably what your Cubase 6.5 is. So from version 8, they went Elements, Artist, Pro, just as a distinction. But Cubase 6.5 is a higher tier. That's kind of like the Pro level, the highest level of Cubase. And the Cubase 6.5 Artist would be a subset of those features, would have less features. So they're going to be different programs. All right, so we have a question from Ron. Is there a setting in Very Audio to show advanced controls by default? So there really isn't. I've kind of asked for a preference before, and I'll kind of reiterate it. But like once you go into Very Audio, you could see kind of the show default smart controls or show all smart controls. So there isn't a way that I know of to have the all smart controls automatically show up by default, but I'll re-mention that again. Okay, so we have a question from Jess Zabelski. In Cubase 11 Pro, Dorico Elements 3.5, a 5-track project of VSTIs, Cubase grays out Music XML for export, which I'd like to import into my Dorico Elements 3.5 requirements to create Music XML. All right, so let's take a look. So generally, the Music XML is only going to show up once you're in the score editor. So let's say if I just want to take a quick Schubert piece here. Okay, so let's say I come here and I go to export. We'll see Music XML grayed out as an option. But once I go into, not my tempo editor, there's one key off, but once I go into my score editor, and we look at it in page mode. So now at this point, I could export to Music XML. So the Music XML option is only going to be available once you're in the score editor. So, start from the score editor and then you should be all set, Jeff. All right, so Michael Pierce says, oh yeah, I got to upgrade this month and remember to slap the like button. So yeah, if you learn something new in the live stream, make sure that, or get a question answered, or just want to support the live stream, make sure that you hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do that as well. Okay, so we have a question. If you were asked to create an effect for vocals which emulated a walkie-talkie when you receive an incoming voice, how would you go about that? And thank you, and happy early 4th of July. So I would use one of the EQ presets. I believe that there's like an AM radio or telephone voice. So let's say if I just wanted to play back this file. So I think if we go to the EQ, so I think if we just kind of come over here, I think there's usually like an AM radio preset. All right, so let me just look for the EQ presets. It's basically just kind of shelving the highs and lows, but let's see, I think that there is a particular preset for this particular function that's quite effective. Phone line. So let's try phone line preset. All right, so now when we come over here,
At the ground, not a sound.
so I would use those like a really kind of sharp EQ like that. And if we wanted to,
We can't go on
so that's without that EQ, so it's going to sound like a walkie-talkie.
How can I feel you?
So I would just do that to look for the phone line preset. And then that should get you to kind of a walkie-talkie sound pretty quickly. All right, so we have a question. Is there any solution to hear the samples when control room is on? So I've gotten this question a couple of times, and I've never had an issue where if I was auditioning through different loops, I have my control room on, that it's automatically turned on. So make sure, one, that you have, the automatic preview, autoplay activated. So if you do this, it's not going to. So make sure that you have, that turned on. And then you could just audition everything. One preference that sometimes gets enabled that could throw this off, and it's not a Mac preference, but rather a Cubase preference. Sorry for my error. If you go to control room, is make sure that this isn't checked, the use phone channels as preview channel, because this is the preview, and you could route that specifically to headphones in the phones channel. So if you have that checked, try unchecking that as well. All right, just find my spot in the chat field again. Thanks for all the wonderful questions. All right, so we have we have a question. What are workspaces and how can I utilize them? So let's say instead, we could have a myriad, a multitude of windows open inside of Cubase. So let's say I wanted to have this set up for Very Audio in this edit view. I wanted to have, plugins open. So like when I'm working with vocals, I wanted to come over here and just say, okay, I come here and let's get to the inserts. So if I'm doing my vocals, I'm tweaking tuning, and let's say my fader here for the vocal, and I wanted to have these three windows open, I could save them as a workspace. So this will kind of keep all of my windows set up for me. So if I just say, let's add a workspace, and these could be saved globally, they could be available in any project or just on a project window level. So we'll just call this Ron. Okay, so I'll save that. So let's say now I'm full, I need to go full on mix console in the large window. So at this point, I will come over here, and I just wanted to have this set up as my main mix. So I could come over here, let's add a workspace, and I can make this a global or a project. And these workspaces can be recalled just by a keyboard shortcut if you want. So now I'll come over here. Now, immediately, instead of like going back to a bunch of other windows, I could just say, let's go to Ron, and that will bring back all of my windows into selections. Let's go back to my workspace of my mix console, and all the windows, everything can be kind of stored as kind of like a starting off point for keeping preset configurations of different windows as you'd see fit. Okay. So we see Detlef it says, I also upgraded to Spectral Layers 8 Pro and need more input. So I'm kind of learning Spectral Layers 8 Pro. It kind of came at me late. But I think that there will be a Spectral Layers live stream coming. You know, we asked, I think it was a week ago today, I actually emailed Mike Scheibinger, who does the Spectral Layers live streams, when it might be. And I think it was going to be the 10th. So I think that's a week from tomorrow. So look for an upcoming dedicated Spectral Layers live stream. Okay. Okay, so we have a question from James Bond. How can I link, I guess, two editor events so I don't need to select them again? And I get, so I guess it's, so how can I link toe editor? I assume that's two editor events, so I don't need to select them again, so I can switch in editor window each time. Okay, so let's say if I have like this guitar part, and you know, instead of having to come over here and select each of those particular parts, I think what you could do maybe is just choose to, if your event has multiple parts, just come over here, and if you hit kind of Control E, and you could have that kind of automatically set up for different configurations. But at this point, you could see all of your parts. So if you initiate kind of a MIDI editor from, you know, if you edit not the event, but if you edit the track. So now when I come over here, I can see, you know, as we'll move over, and we could kind of synchronize these two views. So let's say now I wanted to hit, you know, Command or Control E. I could see everything kind of laid out for me. But as you know, hover over different events, that you could automatically have like those events selected. There's a preference for that. But, you know, try to, you know, just edit the track as opposed to editing the event, and see if that helps you, James. Okay, so we have a question from John Costigan. So is it okay to import all the group and effects channels from 5 songs into a single project for a template? Yeah, certainly there's no problem in doing that. However, you know, and I know that people will often build up like, you know, templates for productions, you know, that are constantly evolving. It's like, oh, you know, this reverb really worked well, and I just hit this particular, you know, plug-in on a bass, and now it was just magical. And then they'll just kind of keep implementing and taking elements from different projects and effects channels and storing it in kind of the master template. Okay, so you see a question from Alexander, but it's not in English, and I'm not smart enough to read the language. But if it's a question, maybe if it could be translated to English, I'd be glad to help. I'm not sure if it's if it's an actual question or not. So apologize for my ignorance of being a primary English speaker. Okay, so we see the Monk Pete's, and I think this is about the brick wall limiter, controlling it. So thank you, Greg. Great solution for the monitor out inserts. It's very handy to control monitor outputs without opening the plugin GUI. So you'll use the quick control. So yeah. Okay, so we had a question from Martin. When I'm using curves in my CC11 lanes, it sends out a default value of 0. When it's not playing back, that means that I can't monitor MIDI note by clicking it, just my system. So what some people will do, and you can see this, so if you needed to send like a default value, and you don't want to, I know a lot of people will have a default like CC11 or CC1 value kind of written into a particular part, so that, it will sound initially. Some libraries you need to like move the modulation wheel up before you hear it. So like if we come over here to, let's say, Halion Sonic SE, and we go to like the Halion Symphonic Orchestra, and let's say, okay, I just want to do like a string section that, when we play this now, it's going to not be generally loud until we actually send a, send a particular CC message to it. So when we now want to do that. So one solution, if you don't want to always have that in, if you're doing it as a template, which a lot of composers will do, is you could go to the MIDI inserts, and then you'll have MIDI control. So you could say, okay, CC11, I want it to default to be a value of 96. And then at that point, you could choose, so when it plays back now, we don't have to have the value written, but you could have these controllers and these control values, and you can pick whatever controller you want that will kind of start off with the default value, so that as you play, that you'll actually be able to hear. So. All right, so Fab wants people to know, so don't miss the 40% on all updates, upgrades, promotion at the moment. Just got my Cubase 11 Pro now, starting with the mature latest version at a great price. We see John Costigan says, I think announcing timestamps might be confusing. Okay. All right, so, and I just see from Jazz Dude says, check the 3 dots on top right of the chat window for timestamps on and off, but maybe as the host, I don't really have that option to see, so sorry. Okay, so we have Michael Teens joining us from Weatherford, Texas. I believe the virtual ice creams will begin. Thanks for joining us, Michael. Great to see you on the live stream. Okay, and Michael Teens wants everyone to whack the like button, and it will keep me overemployed. All right. All right, so we have a question from Nick Wiley. Any tips on troubleshooting Cubase Pro 10.5 crashing randomly with no error message, just disappears? One thing I would try to do is try to, I don't know if you started to, if you have tried to start Cubase in kind of the safe mode, which will bypass preferences or third party plugins. So if you hold down Alt Control Shift and then double click to start the program and then hold down Alt Control Shift or Command Option Shift on Mac, that you'll get asked if you want to disable program preferences. You could do that and try to disable third-party plugins, and generally that will kind of solve issues like that. All right, so see from Peter Brown, it says the upgrade specifies for Cubase Artist, but doesn't specify for Cubase 6.5 Pro. If I download Artist for 6.5, am I getting Cubase 11 Pro? So let's take a quick look at the upgrade window. So it might be like an update, but we'll see if we could find it quickly here. And all right, so let's say we're going to buy Cubase Pro 11. So we'll say updates, upgrades. Okay, so here you want to choose not upgrades, but updates. And then you could just see upgrade from Cubase 6.5, Cubase 6.5.4. So there you could see the updates directly right there. So, and you can see, I'm not sure what country you're in, but you could see the different pricing will be localized for your particular country. So give that a shot. All right. So, and that's as opposed to upgrade. So you can see Cubase Artist here, but if you get update, so upgrading is kind of going up a level, updating is maintaining at the same level. So give that a shot, Peter. All right, so the ice cream from Michael Teams has begun. All right, so we have Gio checking in from Argentina. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we have Fallen Beats. Hi from Mizoram. I'm sure I pronounced that wrong. Thanks for joining us. And Evenger's saying with phone line preset and add some distortion to it. So that would help getting you kind of a walkie-talkie voice sound. All right, so we have Vaughn DeVille just joining us. He's probably been on for a little while. I'm just catching up to his comment. Thanks for joining. All right, see a comment from Fab. Hope Steinberg continues to make more minor updates with improvements instead of big new features. Version 11 is awesome and full of little improved things that matter almost every day. Love it. So, yeah, there's always, doing that balance of, providing big features plus doing a number of little things that make existing users' workflows happier. So I think they do a nice job of realizing that balance. Okay. Michael Pierce is also suggesting adding quadrifuzz, which is in our... Okay, so just see from Loretta, it says in checking again, no output tab as you showed running iMac, running Mac i7, 64-bit Big Sur. Steinberg download assistant says download again, which I did once. Immerse with ambient decoder said download again as well. So, all right, so yeah, try just out of curiosity, starting it with, hold down before you run Nuendo, before you, right after you start Nuendo, hold down Command Option Shift and see if you disable the program preferences, if that helps. All right, so Jazz Dude's getting 3 scoops of Cordial Cherries ice cream. That's such a great flavor name. Okay. Okay, so we're just seeing some discussion of vinyl effects, and this might be going for kind of the walkie-talkie. But one kind of oldie but goodie, and this is like an early VST plugin. It was kind of done as a joke and became kind of a big cult hit. So let's say if I wanted to take just this vocal, another choice you could do instead of just utilizing EQ is under distortion. There's one called Grungelizer. So if you wanted to add hum, crackle, so we could just say, okay, I wanted to get rid of hum, and you could add distortion. So afraid to smile, you think that so you could add crackle at different, 78, 45, or 33 RPM. You add hum at 50 or 60 cycles, depending which continent you live on. And then there's just kind of an overall EQ. So that could give you a good walkie-talkie sound without another included tool in Cubase that you could check out. All right, great to see Mark Rabin on the live stream. Okay, so a question, a quick question, feature request. Can we have both a sample preview in both main and headphones channels? I understand choosing between the two, but why not both? I produce both on speakers and headphones. So the vast majority of audio interfaces allow you to mimic outputs 1 and 2 into your headphone mix. So if you're just plug your headphones into your audio interface, you can in essence have it for both, and I think that's probably 99% of audio interfaces will just do that. And I just see, or at least in further on Luca's comment, or at least a toggle button on the main interface, not through the preferences. So I think you could probably even, if your interface didn't do that for some reason, let's come over here. You could probably just activate the function in the preferences key command. Let's take a quick look. So control room, use phones channel. So you could set up your own keyboard shortcut to activate that. But again, the vast majority of audio interfaces will mimic outputs 1 and 2 out of the headphone output. So you could, in essence, just do it. So we see from the Monk beats, I had a preference in the old Cubase versions that I can't find now. My fault. How to make Cubase open directly the last project on startup. So I think that behavior's changed because we would have people that would automatically load up like a large template, and with some composers, some of their templates could take 5 minutes to load, and then you couldn't really stop it easily. So I think that used to be under general, and that's maybe why the preference was removed, just kind of for that. So I think that preference may have kind of gone away, which is why you can't find it, the Monk beats. All right, Michael Teams is just killing it with ice cream flavors. All right, so we have a question. What is a bus channel? So a bus channel allows us to kind of, we use the terms groups and effect sends, and other programs could use buses as a terminology, but it's really kind of the same concept. But it's basically sending the signal to another destination, and it could be sending it to an effect send to incorporate reverbs or delays and blend those with the channels. Or it could be just to do processing like a group. So if I wanted to take like all of my drums, and instead of moving all of these faders the same amount, what I could do is I could come over here and select all of my drums and then add a track, and I'm going to add a group channel to the selected channels. And once we add this group channel, now I could increase or decrease my volume of the drums all with one fader and still keep this proportional. This would also allow me to do EQs on the drums as one entity instead of EQing each drum source. Or if I wanted to do dynamics processing, so this way I could compress just the drums as one entity. Now if I wanted to take, just the snare of that particular drum, so let's say I want to take this snare and add, more reverb. We could also, some people would call this a bus, but basically sending the signal out to also an effect send. So we come over here, so let's say I want my reverence. And now when I go to my sends for the snare, I could just come right over here to the snare, and we could blend in the amount of the snare that's going to. So if I wanted to have like a really large, obnoxious. So this way we could send the signal to our effects channel here and blend the amount of dry versus the processed. So as soon as we hear the snare kick in here. So now if we look, we can see that effects end. If we wanted to bring that down, our effects channel will be minimized in level that we're seeing in the mixer. So those are two ways that you can use bus channels, the two most common ways. Okay, so you see a question from Zofo. When is the sale? So there's currently a sale going on right now, started yesterday through the month of July. So look for that. You go to the Steinberg website. All right, we see from John Costigan, thanks for the template explanation. So you're welcome. So question, is there a way to have an export come in at the top of the channels list instead of the bottom? So currently it will go to the bottom. So there isn't a way to do that, but you could just simply, I think, you could probably, so there isn't a way to do it, but you know where it is, and you could just simply, go to the bottom of the track and move it up if needed. But it's going to be, so sometimes if we do that, we don't want it to necessarily affect other routing and stuff like that. So that's kind of some of the thinking of problems that could happen if all of a sudden all of your tracks get shifted over because of the a mix down file being placed. And especially if you're doing multiple stems, you may not want your whole project to shift over as much. But it's at the bottom, they'll just kind of be at the end without affecting kind of the whole project and mix setup. Okay, so I just see from Von DeVille says I work with group effects at the top and always have to drag the bounce channel all the way up, which is quite slow in a big project. You could also just I think some people will come over here and just choose to, if you go to your configurations, you can say, okay, show only selected tracks. You could just, so if you have that selected, and if and now you could even place it at the top of the divided track list, and come over here and just show all tracks, and now you could have your mix down file at the top quite easily. So if you just do a divide track list feature, just go to the channel configurations, have that one selected, and then you could show only selected tracks, move it up into the top, and then show all tracks. And you could probably even do that in a macro if you wanted to. All right, so a question from Benny. What's the use of audio normalize and how to set equal volume to the entire vocal? What are the highlights of audio process options? So you could definitely, do normalize, for an entire vocal. Sometimes that may, bring up some stuff. So, what normalize will do is kind of, make sure that you have, if I look at this particular audio file, and if I wanted this audio file here to, let's say I'll just select this file and I'll choose to normalize it. All right. So when we do this, let's go to our processes menu and we'll normalize the audio, and we'll make this go to our peak, and we'll say minus 6 dB, and we can see that it's gotten louder. But that will kind of, bring up everything, and that could lose some of the dynamics. So if you're doing this on a vocal, that may make, if you had a breath, someone went before singing, that may make the breath really loud, and that may not be what you want to actually do. So some people would avoid kind of normalizing individual parts where you may want to retain the dynamics, because you may lose some of the dynamic contours of the file. But generally it can make sure that you're getting kind of the most gain out of your system. It used to be like an easy way. You say, okay, I want to normalize everything to minus 0.01. And if I just change that, we can see that the amplitude, that guitar part's can get much louder. Now, does that work better in the mix? Not necessarily. So while it's louder, it may actually kind of fight against you with other tracks and other dynamics and gain staging. So, and if we wanted to, and kind of the secondary question with that is, what are the highlights of some of the audio process options? So if you want to do fade ins and fade outs, you could adjust gain overall. You normalize if you wanted to pitch shift, if you need to remove DC offset, reversing, silencing, switching to left and right channels. Those are some different. Those are some of the different settings that you'll have options to right there. Okay, reading through comments. Okay, so we see a question from Barry Williams. How do you get an access code? So, an access code that you can enter into the Steinberg download managers once you purchase a program electronically from a retailer or from a Steinberg online shop, or if you purchase a boxed version, often you get a digital access code. And to get your program and to get licensed, really all you need to do is, like, once you're in your Steinberg download assistant, and this is often a code you get with the purchase of the program in either electronic or a tactile, box. So really all you have to do is now come over here, and then you could enter your download access code directly inside. Let me just... And then that could link you directly to... So once you have your access code, so when you buy the program, that's often the code that you get, which will give you an e-licenser code and lead you to authorization. So... Okay, so we have a question. Hello, how to set contact to multiple outputs in Cubase? I know you can add MIDI tracks and load in contact libraries, but how in this way I can do automation in contacts is probably what you need to do. And I don't have a license of contact on my system, but let's say if I wanted to add... I'll add a Hallian. And once we have that virtual instrument, we could just go into the VSTI tab here, and you could just click just to the right of the names, and then you could activate all of the outputs that are found within that particular instrument. So you could activate all your outputs, and now your mix console will get really large with all of the outputs directly from your Hallian. And if you wanted to enter and tweak the automation, you could click on the little plus sign here, and you'd see all the automation lanes for the multiple outputs that have been activated just right here. So just to the right of the name in the instrument rack, and click on activate outputs. Okay, what does mean by bus, and what's the difference between group channels and buses? Can explain with some examples. I think we covered that a little bit earlier, but basically group channels and buses, people use a bus interchangeably. So, we can send audio to an effect channel like we showed just a couple minutes ago, or to a group channel for kind of collective processing. All right, so we have Brian Sawyer Sr. checking in. It's great to see you on the Zoom meetup on Tuesday. Okay, so we have a question. Let's say I have 6 effects channels, each with their own settings, and I create another project. Is there a preset I'm not aware of in Cubase to store load all those 6 effects tracks? So let's give it a shot. Thanks for all the great questions. All right, and I'll just do this without going to our template that we created. All right, so I'll add a reverb. Let's add say a mono delay. Let's add a stereo delay. Let's say a chorusing. We'll add one more. So let's say a flanger. Okay, so we have all of these effects. Okay, so let's see if we can save a track preset. Let's see if we could save this. Okay, so let's say we have that. So let's come over to our media. Okay, so let's say I do a new track, a new project. All right, so now I'll come over here to user presets, to track presets, to multi, and we see I'll just drag that over. Let's see if that does it. All right, so it looks like we can't do it that way, but I know another way that we could probably do it. So let's activate this. And I'm just going to save it as a project. Okay, so now I go to new. Make sure I had that project activated. All right, so I'll do a new project. And now I could import tracks from project. So we'll come over here to the folder that I saved it. Then I will just come over here. Let's select all of the tracks. And so now in our new project, all of those will be saved. So if you save it all within a project, or you wanted to export it, import it from a project, all you have to do is just go to import tracks from project, and you can import all of your effects that way. All right, so we see, does all this work in Windows 11? So, you know, there aren't any official like beta versions yet of Windows 11. So I'm sure that the Steinberg people will be doing quality assurance tests, but it's really early still for Windows 11. So, all right, so we have a question about the update from Cubase 10.5 to 11. I heard older VSTs no longer supported. True or not? So pretty much there wasn't any changes from 10.5 to 11. It could be that if you're running on Mac and you have an M1 processor, that it's not Cubase, it's not making the older plugins, older VSTs not working, but it could be the M1 chip or the operating system, but there's no real changes from 10.5 to 11 in regards to plugins. There was a big change, I think, with 9.5, if memory serves, that they stopped doing, or 8.5, they stopped doing 64-bit plugins. But from 10.5 to 11, I don't think you'll see any difference between them, unless you have gotten a new processor, perhaps on the Mac side. Okay, so we just see from Sable Winners, got to grab a couple of 2 terabyte hard drives. Recommendations, anyone? So yeah, I just see other people mentioning SSD. And you could do an external SSD over USB 3. So I think the Samsung T5, a lot of people use for external libraries. All right, thanks for all the great comments. And if you've learned something new, make sure that you hit the like button. All right. All right, just finding my place. Sorry, my chat field jumped on me again. All right, so I think I'm good. All right, so we see, all right, so Yamaha Brazil checking in. Thanks for joining us. We see DC saying hello. Von DeVille saying thanks for doing this. You're welcome. Glad to be able to help customers and people with their creative pursuits. All right, so I see Peter Brown who's asking earlier about the updates and upgrades from a 6.5. So to be sure, I would not be getting the upgrade, but would be getting the update for less expensive. So yes, so upgrade is kind of going from a smaller version of Cubase to a bigger version, as opposed, and an update's going from like a previous version of that same bigger version to the later version of the bigger version. So I know it's confusing. And so he's letting us know he's from Vermont. So thanks for joining us. It's a beautiful part of America. Haven't been up there in a long time. So we have a question. Any idea why I get the error message of a serious problem has occurred when I open a drum MIDI event in the lower zone? So I don't think I've run into that, but let's go ahead and I'll just take a quick look just to make sure. Okay, so let me just drag over particular file. So when I double click here, we have it in the drum editor. Let's get to the key editor, drum. So, yeah, so I haven't come across that. I don't know if you have tried holding down, if you get that consistently, you may want to try starting it in kind of the safe mode, which again is after you start Cubase, like right after, hold down Alt Control Shift or Command Option plus Shift and try to temporarily disable program preferences. Or if you can see if it's always when you do, a particular instrument. And I see that you also say, George, that it's also when there's no drum map assigned. So I don't have a drum map really assigned to this, just kind of a general MIDI map. So try those things. All right, great to see that Randy Lee could join us today. All right. And make sure that if you've learned something new that you hit the like button. All right, and Randy got a great ice cream flavor of Millennium Crunch ice cream from Michael Teams. He's so generous. Okay, question from Mark Rabin. Does Steinberg make a soft clipping tool? So if you wanted to, I think it might be hidden under like a really obscure name. It might be under. So yeah, it's called Soft Clipper. So try that out, Mark. And you'll find it under the distortion category. So once again, just look for Soft Clipper under distortion. So yeah, there's one included. We'll give you that feature. We'll give you that plugin free just for attending the live stream. Jeff Sabelski is now realizing that there is a hamburger ice cream flavor from Texas. So if anyone was going to do it, it would be Texas. So, all right. All right. So we see Peter's wishing everyone a happy belated Canada Day to all of his fellow countrymen. So it's great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to having 4th of July off here. But we're sending well wishes to all of our Canadian attendees and viewers. See, Jazz Dude is sharing his epiphany of the day of the Grungelizer. So yeah, it's an oldie but a goodie. I remember when it first came out. I think we introduced it. I think the movie Wag the Dog, which was now I'm forgetting Dustin Hoffman film. It's a kind of a political film, and they had to kind of fake like an old recording for like a song Old Shep, like about a dog for a political ad. And it was one of the first films where he used Nuendo for the post, and he used the Grungelizer plugin to do that effect. Okay, so I just see, hey Greg, upgrade $149.99, update $59.99. Which one will work better with Cubase 6.5? The cost is not relevant to me. So if you're doing, it's if you have the Cubase 6.5 as opposed to Cubase Artist 6.5, you want to do the update. Otherwise, the upgrade won't actually work, and you'll have to return it, and will be a lot more problems. So you could get the cheaper one and not have problems, because if you try to, it'll look for the previous license to update from. So if you just simply at that point choose to do like an upgrade, then it won't see the right license, because it'll be looking for a Cubase Artist 6.5 as opposed to a Cubase 6.5 license. So just do the update and save the money, because that's the one that will work for you. All right, so we have Christian D68 saying hello from France. I'm glad you could join us. All right, so we see Luca says, follow up to the sample preview question. I need the headphones channel because of different EQ thingies there. Sonar works, so I can't mimic the channel one, or I'll get the speakers. Sonar works. So try just to toggle the switch. So set up your key command under Edit Key Commands and look under Preferences. And under Control Room, use phone channels. So you could set up a key command just to toggle and turn that preference on and off if you need to. All right. So just see a comment from Mark Rabin, directed to Jeff Sabelsky. Is Squasher a soft clipper? I've not used it, but I will. I read an article today, like every other day, and it said, could not imagine not having soft clipper on left or right. So we could think of more of Squashers being kind of an up-down compressor. So, but yeah, just try using the actual soft clipper plugin, and then you should that will get you what you want, I think, pretty quickly. You could give it a try. All right, so we have a question. After tempo detection, I am able to move each beat with the warp tool, but is it possible to move all the beats at the right of the actual position together? And I think that this might be with a modifier key. Let's see if we can make it work here. This is from Christian D68. It's a modifier key that's changed over the years and has evolved. So let me just see if I can find it to review. Okay, so let's say I'll just do a quick tempo detection here. Okay, so now all right, so let's say if I wanted to move the individual parts. All right, so I can move an individual one just normally. And, if you, but I think if you hold down shift, that it might be, let me just jump back a couple stages here. So you could try holding down shift, but one of the things that you could do is, let's say if we do our tempo detection, you could activate, like for the reanalysis. So if we have this open and we make our changes, and this is activated here, this will kind of just do an analysis further down the line if it needs to. So let's say, okay, we want to do this. That will basically alter the settings kind of either previously or later. But you could also, if you're kind of in standalone mode, I think if you hold down shift, that let me just... thought it was shift, but I think the shift modifier key may allow you to adjust if there's none. Let's say if I just did this manually, bear with me just for a second. So if I do my time warp here, so let's say, and I want measure 4 here, that if I hold down shift, that it will kind of set the same interval after. So holding down shift. So if I do this, I can adjust 1 point at a time. But if it's going to be a pretty steady thing, if I hold down shift, it will keep that same tempo interval from that position. So as we kind of adjust, you could just... from that point on, adjust all the tempo values after or individually. So give that a try and let us know if that works. Okay, so we see from Ron, thanks for the tip about sequential patching. Greg, definitely going to be useful, but I wish there's an option to automatically patch in sequence features request just to save a few clicks. Big thanks. Yeah, so I kind of got those features added. Like I had to do a lot of work. Like I was involved. It was probably 2004 with the Eric Clapton's Crossroads project. So, and we had to do 56 tracks. So, after doing that experience, we wanted to make it easier for people just to automatically, route and ripple the inputs. Okay, so we have a question from Ingrid. Hi, is a chord detection for audio files integrated? Something like Yamaha's chord tracker app? Thank you. So currently not. The chord detection is currently for MIDI, but it's kind of a common feature request. So maybe in the future we could see something, but I know we've kind of passed it on before, and that the team is aware of the people wanting to use that. All right, so we have a question. Does anyone know if the MIDI in and out of the Steinberg interfaces needs a special driver, or is it just class compliant? I see people talking about downloading Yamaha MIDI driver. Thanks. So generally, if you just connect it, it could be set into a class compliant mode for the audio interface, but not for the MIDI. So you'll need to install the drivers. So if you install like the tools for the audio interface, that will automatically install the drivers. But I don't believe that the MIDI drivers themselves are class compliant. So you just need to download. So if you just download any of the tools for the particular interface, the USB driver will be installed. But I believe it is just using the Yamaha USB MIDI driver for that. Okay, so we have a question. Hi, Greg. Could you please test the audio fader pinning not working or pining not working in the inspector for instrument tracks? The audio fader pinning works for audio tracks, but not for instrument tracks. Kindly check. Could you let me know what you mean by pinning? And I'd be glad to check, but I don't know what pinning or pining for the fader is. So I'm probably just being dense myself, but if you could maybe explain it a little bit more, that would be helpful. I'd be happy to take a look at it. Okay, so we have a question from Jeff Sabelski. Greg, is there a way to more quickly audit the reverb inserts on the master track when all the mixes from the plugin are at 100% when toggling through presets? So I guess audit is audition the reverb inserts on the master track when all the mixes from the plugin are at 100%. So let's take a quick look. Let's activate this. All right, so I will. All right, so I'll just. All right, so let's say if I have this and I want to audition different reverbs, so I will add effects channel to this drums. All right, so let's say I just want to do a quick reverence. Okay. Okay. So quickly auditioning the reverb inserts on the master track when all the mixes from the plugin are at 100% when toggling through presets. So let's say, okay, so let's just say if I wanted to browse through different presets, I know this isn't on the master track, but as you just kind of so I'm just hitting my down arrow keys to audition, but I'll try it quickly on the master fader. So let me just come here, kill it on send, and we'll do it on the master fader. So, you know, generally it may not be so advisable to put the verb on the master fader, but so let's say we'll do a reverence again. All right, let me just solo. All right, so, you know, you may, so here, let's say if you wanted to, so I think if you wanted to just set the mix, so let's say if we lock the mix values here, and so as I just, so if it's the kind of situation where you want the, where every time you load up a preset, you don't, sorry about that, where every time you load up a preset, you don't want this to jump to 100%, try just clicking on the lock, and then as you load up different presets, those will all stay at the same mix percentage, Jeff. So let me know if that's what you want to accomplish. All right, so we see, hello, I'm working with a band that plays tuned in 432 hertz. When I want to tune the voice in Very Audio, looks like doesn't recognize the tuning. So to tune a voice is 440. Is it possible tuning in 432? So, you know, you could, you know, as you do Very Audio, it's going to be designed for working in 440 hertz. What I see some people do to the vocal file is just come over here, and if you do a fine tune, so let's say it was done at 432, is just add 8 to it here, and then at that point, you know, when you do the tuning in Very Audio, you could tune it normally, but you know, probably 8 cents isn't going to make a big difference, you know, audible, you know, to the vocal. So let's just say if I wanted to, I'll take the vocal and knock it up 8 cents in a project, and we'll see if it's like horrible or noticeable or just sounds completely out of temperament. So let's say we'll take this project here.
I turn it up, you wouldn't mind. Up until now, that was okay.
All right, somewhere I have way too much reverb on it. Let me just. So let's say if I just wanted to take, start from beginning, see if we need to catch any automation. And let me me just check my control room, see if I have an insert on or something.
Just leave it alone.
So let's say if I just take like this vocal and I wanted to bump it up 8 cents.
Still up when I played Hey Jude. I should have told you were out of tune.
So let's say now I put it down to 0
That was okay.
or to -8.
Up until now, that was okay. Suddenly.
So even if the band is tuned to 432, probably, and if you have to do tuning, it's probably not 8 cents that's going to make the difference, but you could try to just offset it by just doing the fine tuning on the vocal that you want. And you can see that as I changed it -8 to 0 to +8, that it didn't jump out to me. Maybe if you have perfect pitch, it would, but. Okay. All right, so we see Jeff Sabelski saying he needs a Darko Pro sale. Imagine all the capital letters. Like I was young, I need it bad. Yeah, so there's always going to be, I think Darko sale was earlier in the year, but, look for promotions. It's like every month there's going to be different promotions. All right, so see Mark Rabin saying show only selected tracks is a great hotkey. All right, so we just see a question, how do you denoise background noise when recording vocals? So, generally, recording vocals itself shouldn't really, add noise. But if you do run into different elements, you could try to use like the Spectral Layers 1 that kind of comes, with Cubase. So if you wanted to just kind of take, there isn't a denoiser plugin per se. But if you wanted to try, many times just applying EQ, you can kind of narrow out the noise. But if you go to your audio to extensions, you can get into spectral layers and you could filter out kind of, different noise sections of the audio. And if you find that you have noise in particular, if you have like kind of the bigger version of spectral layers, that you could actually go to noise, like you could find a little isolated bit of noise in a vocal, like maybe when they're not singing, and be able to do register the noise and then be able to filter it out. So you could do some stuff like that as well within spectral layers. So, if you need to kind of do more surgical editing, the Spectral Layers 1 that's included with Cubase 11 is a great solution for that. All right. So we have Kolja checking in from Belgium. Thanks for joining us. He's thanking us for another great live stream. And if you've learned something new, make sure you hit the like button so that we can continue to do these live streams. See, Sable Winners is popping in and out while making Jeff Bezos richer. So we have a question: is there an equivalent of Pro Tools clip gain in Cubase? So yeah, I think they actually kind of nicked the whole feature from us. But anytime that you have an event here, you could just go to the center and adjust the volume just like that. So you just kind of hover over. It may not be visible until you hover over the area just for, so it's not an annoying eyesore, but as soon as you move over an area, you can just come right over here and adjust the clip just like that. All right, so we see Loretta got her output in audio connections and Nuendo back. So thanks for letting us know, Loretta. Okay, so we have a question from William. Please teach an effective way to crop and move fragments when editing. All right, so let's say I've kind of just come over here and, we could do stuff like, okay, if I wanted to cut or split an event, you could hold down kind of the Alt or Option key and you could split. If you wanted to just crop the audio, you could grab the lower handles, and this will be kind of the default mode, but there's two other modes. So that's normal sizing. I'll make this a little larger. So let's say I want this to start and end here. There's also sizing moves contents. So if I wanted the beginning of this file to fall over here, and then we could let kind of the ending follow as necessary, or I want the end to fall earlier in time and slip the beginning, or we could choose a third mode of sizing applies time stretch. So I need this to automatically fit within a specified time range. I'll just go ahead and remove the spectral layers editor here. So I can say I just need that to fit into that amount of time. But if you hold down Alt Control or Command Option, and let's say we go back to our normal sizing, and you could toggle between those two modes just by hitting 1 on your computer keyboard. But you could also just come right over here and slip the audio within the boundary of the event as well. So if you want to say, okay, I just want to do a fade in and slip the audio, you could do that just very easily. So those are a couple of things you could do. All right, Pablo has joined us. So it's wonderful to have you back, Pablo. We missed you. Now everything's better. He's going to get a special ice cream flavor just because he's an awesome drummer too. All right, so Jazz Dude saying we need a greeting macro here. The Cubase family is growing fast. So yeah. All right, so we have questions. So what are we going to watch today? So generally what this is people could ask questions under Steinberg software. So mostly Cubase related, but any Steinberg product question is viable. So, and then if you have a question on if you don't understand a feature or how to use a feature better, we'll try to explain it to you. Okay, just going through some more comments. See, Michael Pierce is going to take his tutoring break. All right, so we see Just Fun Time just got his Cubase 11 Pro. Love it. So it's great. Okay. Okay, so we just see Fab's commented to, I guess it was directed to Just Fun. Says he's amazed by all the hidden little improvements that actually matter a lot. All right, and Sable Winters wants people to hit the like button so we can get to 100 likes early. So that's always a great place to be at. Enables us to keep doing these live streams to help people out. It's great to have Pablo back after he's been busy with concerts and stuff. All right, so we have a question. Hello, how can I assign a key command to freeze track? So I don't think that there's a key command for it. I'll check one more time. But let's just come over here. Yeah, so, but, if you wanted to kind of accomplish the same thing is, just, coming to, just use a key command for render in place. So if you wanted to, just take a particular, file, just, use the render in place function, which will kind of be probably a more contemporary version of the freeze. So just kind of come right over here and just choose to do, a render in place. I'll just go ahead and abort that quickly, but it'll kind of get you to the same functions. So if you wanted to take like a number of like this loop and these loops, and once they're selected, I could choose, we go to your render settings, and with the render settings, you have some more options available for you. So let's say I wanted to include the effects, the channel settings. I could do it as one event, and you could just have it automatically muted. I could mix the files down. So if I just do that, it'll now just kind of render all of the files down for us into one event. And so you could do this for, audio and MIDI together, all to be mixed down to one particular event. So, think of maybe trying, if you wanted to do it with a keyboard shortcut, try to use maybe the render in place functionality. All right, so we see from 6 Beats. So he's a FL Studio producer. This was his first time seeing the Cubase interface. So thanks for joining the live stream. If you have any questions, just let us know. We're glad that you can make it. All right, and Zofo is just wanting everyone to know that the sale is on now. All right, and Michael Teams is famous according to Pablo. All right, and I am La Leche according to Pablo. So we missed the La Leche while you were gone. So, all right. See, great comment from Jazz Dude. Great movie, Wag the Dog. It was never more real than today. And Robert De Niro. So, yeah. I haven't watched it in a while, but it was good. Yeah, good old shoe. That was it in that shop. Good old shoe. So. So we just see from from Kolja in Belgium. I would love to be able to set the frequency EQ as default channel EQ and then control it with amazing CC121. Anyone here has Steinberg's ear to whisper it to them? So yeah, there's obviously, it's been a feature request in the past that people have wanted, but there's probably about 100 million projects that have the default channel EQ. So you can use the functions of the AI knob of the CC121 to do it. And you could also, if you wanted to use the quick controls for that, I know it's not the same as being able to utilize the frequency, parameters as quickly as you could with the channel EQ, but, I'll make sure to pass it along again. Okay, so we see from Ted Springman. I'm glad you could join us, Ted. I believe he's in Sherman Oaks. I'm verging on adding possibly 7 additional VE Pro licenses. Any performance issue within main Mac I need to know about? How will Cubase respond if one of the slave PC crashes? Yeah, so I don't have a VE Pro license, so I'm probably not the best person to ask. But maybe someone else. I think Jazz Dude has VE Pro, and I think he's just commenting. He's mentioning that if the slave crashes, nothing happens, just reload it, and then when VE Pro template is fully loaded again, it will go on. So. Okay, so we have a question from Richard Chance. Hi, Greg. Any tips for the best settings for fast audio batch export of multiple cycle markers? I've heard setting the buffer to 2048 is effective, but had mixed results. Cubase 11 here on Big Sur. So, it could, for those people who don't know, if we had multiple, let's say if I add a marker track here, or I think I could maybe show it in our project here. All right, so here we have a normal, like a range of cycle markers, let's say for different parts of a particular project. And as we, excuse me, as we work with this, if we wanted to export audio mixdown, if for those who aren't familiar, we could just choose to export based on all of the markers. So let's say, okay, now we could export these audio files based upon the markers. So we could do that. One tip that a lot of people miss is in the naming configuration, that you could have the name of the cycle marker name be the name of the file for the mixdown. And the question is maybe really like how to do it faster. So I have heard of people, jumping up to, raising the buffer. I've read of people doing that, and they say that it's increased their speed. But it could really depend upon, the plugins that are being utilized in the audio files for, that you're exporting as well. So you see Ted Springman just jumped up to 64 gigs of RAM in his 2013 Trashcan Pro Mac Pro. Okay, so we see a question. Hi, Greg. After tempo detection, The metronome timing before the actual audio file often has a different tempo than the start of the file. Could you show the best way to overcome this? Okay. Okay, so let's take a quick look. Okay, I'll revert. Okay, so let's say I will now come over here and let's utilize our tempo detection. So go to project to tempo detection. Okay, so now I'll close this window here. So say, okay, so we just see, so after tempo detection and metronome timing before the actual audio file often has a different tempo than the start of the file. Could you show the best way to overcome this? So, you know, depending on the file, like here, there may be just like a little bit of, you know, someone breathing or something like that, you know, or maybe the drummer counting off, you know, so sometimes that information can get incorporated. But let's say if I wanted to regulate that, so if I come here, let's go to the bottom and let's see if I just move these, you know, we could just adjust, you know, select those 2 points. And then if you wanted to, you know, bring them down, we could do that. But sometimes it may, you know, affect kind of the overall tempo, but probably the, you know, the tempo information before the audio starts may not be kind of the most important thing. But if you needed to take, you know, like move it all over to give a pre-count for someone. Let's see if I do a edit menu and let's say I go to a global copy. So let's say, or let's just say I globally select everything. So I think we go to select, you know, that you could move kind of like the tempo information and the audio simultaneously if you needed to get kind of a pre-roll type of thing going on. So I know some people will do that if you needed to do tracking with someone else and you needed like, you know, the count in, or you could just do a pre-count inside of Cubase as well. So you could just activate pre-count. So if you just kind of activate the count in, you could do that from right there. So those are a couple different ways, Christian. All right, so we have a question. Is a USB stick required for artist/pro of Cubase? So yeah, it will require the USB e-licenser. So. All right, and we see from Peter Brown, thanks, Greg. Just wanted to make sure that Cubase 6.5 is a bigger version of Cubase as opposed to the previous versions, i.e. Cubase 5 and earlier, and that later updates are compatible with. So yeah. Okay, so we see expanding on my question, pinning is available under instrument track inspector settings, visible items. There's a pin that you said if fader doesn't collapse. Okay, I understand now. Thank you for the clarification. Okay, so let's say, okay, Okay, so let's say pinning is available under instrument track for inspector settings, visible items. Okay, so let's say if we have an audio track, let's add an instrument track. Okay, so let's say we have our fader here. So let me see if I remember how to do this. Okay, so let's say we'll set our fader for our audio track. And let's say for our instrument track. Okay, so let's say for okay, so I see that maybe when we all right, so I think when we come here, we could now pin kind of the fader so that it doesn't go away, but when we're on, so that it won't collapse. But when we come over here to the audio fader, and we go to the setup here, that we don't see it as a pinnable item. Let me just see if we go to yeah, so I let me just see if it's yeah, I'll bring that to their attention just to but thank you for the clarification. I'll bring it to their attention to yeah. So I think I understand what you want. All right, wonderful to see Chase Bethia on the live stream. Thanks for joining us. Great to see you on the Zoom meetup as well. Okay, and our question from Peter Brown about his Cubase 6.5 to 11. And the question is, am I to assume these updates are full versions of Cubase 11 Pro, all colors, loops, behaviors, etc.? Yeah, so it would be the full version. So. All right, so we see Zofo just upgraded and he has to wait for his USB E licenser. So. Congratulations on that. Okay, so we have a question from a DJ perspective. Is there a way to tempo detect multiple songs at different BPMs and set them at a defined tempo? So yeah, you could do that. Let me see if I have something that's appropriate for this. But yeah, I'll show you kind of the basic concept of it. So I think I may have something that might work. All right, so let's say I have two different audio files that will be different lengths. If you want to do kind of like more of a DJ type thing, so let's say we have this and different tempos. All right, so what I could do is just, I'll put them into different areas of time on the timeline, and then I'll just do a quick tempo detection of these. Okay. And then I'll do a quick tempo detection of this file. So I'm going to place them slightly different times. And let's get a project menu that would help. All right. Okay, so we have our tempo detection of both files. Now what I want to do is to basically embed the tempo information of the two files into each other. So I will take this, I'll take both of the files. So we'll select all of the events here. Let me move the tempo map just to the top. So I'm going to select these two files. Go to audio, to advanced, and let's say set definition from tempo. All right, so, and we can do this at the project level. And what this will do is embed the tempo changes of the different files into the two files. And now if I just turn off the tempo and say I want these to both play at 120 beats a minute. And let's not put it into tape algorithm. So now if I play this at 144 and I drop this, this will play back the same tempo. So I could take any of the files and have it match tempo. Just, you know, but what I need to do is put them into different locations in time and embed the tempo data. Go to your audio and choose advanced, set definition from tempo, and then whatever master tempo that you have, even though they're both different files. So let's say I'll knock it up to 160 beats a minute.
Then it was gone. It was a nanosecond love.
So you could just, at that point, just kind of match up stuff for doing kind of like DJ sets, you know, quite easily, even if they are basically, you know, changing and evolving over time. So give that a try. See Mark Rabin saying, why would someone dislike this video? Like, who are you? What did your mother teach you? So it's okay. You know, maybe if someone's question wasn't answered. Okay, so we have a question from Randy Lee. If I upgrade to artist, will my program stop working since I don't have a dongle on hand? So I'm not sure, Randy, if you're doing Cubase AI or Cubase LE. So if you upgrade, it will basically take your Cubase AI license and migrate that into a Cubase artist license. But it won't stop working until the license is activated on your dongle, so you could still be working. All right, so we see from Christian D68, thank you for the time warp tip. I tried to work with tempo track guide, didn't realize I could do it on a track itself. Shift is the solution. That's great. Okay, so we have a question from Peter. Shift plus enter will rename a track and region. How to rename an imported audio file that has already been signed a name. Do not want to end up with a region name that looks like kick 01. So once you like here, we just imported the files. And I think if we, a couple of, so like here I just imported the files and I guess it was the track, the audio file names were automatically imported, but you could just change the file name, and then if you hit the tab key, you could change the description right here from the info line. So if you wanted to do that, Peter, so let me know if that makes sense for you. Thanks for all the great questions. I see that we're close to 100 likes. If we get up to 100 likes, that'd be great for a Friday session. Thanks for all wonderful questions. I see Michael Teams wants people to whack the like button. Okay, so we have a question. The samples from Cubase 11 are free from royalties? Yes, they are. So all the content that comes with Cubase here, it's free from royalties. So you don't have to worry about it. So a lot of programs can't say that. So you just see question, macros to control several parameters at once anytime soon. So, there's some different approaches to handle that if you have a particular function that you want a macro for, but there are ways to navigate, between stuff and to have multiple stages, a macro that contains multiple macros within it. So there are, so if you could, let us know if what you're trying to accomplish in a macro, we could see if we could perhaps come up with a solution for you or to make it easier. Okay, so we have a question. Tricks to optimize CPU usage. Example, use sends instead of costly inserts, freezing tracks. Are there other hints to increase the amount of tracks we can play, record simultaneously? So one thing is that a lot of instruments, if you're running, let's say a particular instrument here, let's say we're running Hallian Sonic, so running Hallian Sonic SE that comes with it. So many times when you have one instrument with a lot of companies and you start loading up, different, and you have 16 different instruments, many times a single instrument can only utilize one CPU core. Some instruments like the Hallian family, you could choose to enable multi-core usage. So you could just come over here and say, okay, I want to use and split and allocate the different voices across different CPU cores. A lot of VST instruments that are very popular don't have that option. So if you realize, if you do a test and, it could be that, running 16 instruments in one instance of sample playback may take, significantly, it may just totally kill one CPU instead of spreading the usage across multiple CPUs. So make sure that if your instrument doesn't allocate across multiple cores, that you run single instruments within more instances of that instrument as opposed to running a single instance of the instrument with lots of different sounds and different sounds loaded and instruments loaded within that single instance. All right, so we see Christian D68 says it's so comfortable to sit down and just learn by listening. All right, Pablo wants people to hit the like button. I see we just hit 100. Thanks, everyone. All right, so Mark Rabin's kind of bring up a great point that's often overlooked. Hey guys, you may know this, but I found it really helpful when I found out I could apply color to markers and chords. So yeah, if you see like a lot of my projects may kind of have that going on. So you can see like my chord tracks will be colorized, marker tracks. Sometimes like having them bright yellow could be easy, but yeah, that's a great tip, Mark. Thanks for sharing that. We see Christian D68 saying, what a wonderful world where answers come before the questions. And Ted Springman's proud to say he hasn't missed the like button in years. We appreciate that, Ted, and all your support you do. All right, so we see Fab is saying Greg is doing a great job. Just make sure you don't click again on an already liked button, as it will unlike it. You want a solid blue color, no gray. So it's a good point. Thanks, and we're glad you're finding this sessions helpful. So I just see, Greg, would you ever like to review the Cubase 11 demo? I loaded up and loved its organization. Would you discuss its purpose as a demo for us a little? So sometimes people will donate demo tracks for us, like as they're working, you know, like if a new feature is being implemented, you know, someone may donate like in the testing community. They may donate a project so that we could use it. And then, you know, for like use case scenarios, we'll take real projects from real users so that we could see if the new features and functions are kind of functioning as expected. I don't think I have it actually downloaded onto this computer, but I could download it for Tuesday's live stream and take a look at it. But yeah, it's always interesting to take a look at other people's projects and how they organize things and have things set up. It's always interesting to learn. All right, so we have a question from Keith Young. Thanks for joining us. Is there a way of making the symbol bigger for having applied offline processing to an event or showing the effect in the console? Thank you. Hope this makes sense. So yeah, when you do offline processing for an event, let's go ahead. I'll just make this event larger so everyone can see. So sometimes at the very upper right-hand corner of an event, you'll see different options. Like if it's in set to musical mode, you'll see a little icon. If there is offline processing, so let's say, okay, I did a fade in of the event, that now we could get this little icon here. So I think, you know, so I don't know of a way to make it bigger. I could see where maybe it could be a little obvious. I think once you kind of know what you're looking for, that you could see, you know, that particular icon would indicate that. So, but I could see if it could maybe be a little more obvious. And you also say, and I think you also mentioned showing the effects in the console. So I think that if you just realize that, once you have something, so, there, you could just hit F7 for any selected event, So once you're here, you could say, okay, just hit F7. So on any event, then you hit F7, you could see kind of the full range. I think if it got implemented into the console, that could be really confusing for a lot of users because they were not sure if that effect is applied in the console or if it's applied directly in, an offline process. So I think kind of delineating and having those in different realms can make a little more sense and could be less confusing, so the customer doesn't try to automate an offline parameter because they see it in a console. But I'll mention about making the distinction maybe a little different for events that have offline processing. All right, so we see Graham Witcher's joined us from Royal Wootton Bassett, so you don't have to worry about missing Tuesday's live stream. It was the big England versus Germany, so Michael Pierce was sharing that England beat Germany, which is kind of unexpected, and we see that you've been playing with your new CC 121 you mentioned, so enjoy. Glad you're able to get one. All right, so we have a question from Mark Rabin. What's the best way to insert like 4 measures? Okay, so let's say I wanted to set my left and right locators in my project, so I'll activate this project here. Okay, so I will just set my left and right locators from measures 11 through 15. So let me just... Okay, so we have, let's say I just wanted to move everything over and have 4 measures of nothing. So I think if we go to edit to range, and then we could just say insert silence, that everything just gets bumped over. So kind of set the range that you want it with the left and right locators and go to edit to range, insert silence. And then that will just move everything over while you're, just that easily. All right, so you see from Jeff Sabelski, all Steinberg apps need a dongle except Dorco SE, I think. So, it's only really the only ones that require dongles are going to be Nuendo, Dorco, just Nuendo, Cubase Artist, and Cubase Pro, and Wavelab Pro. Try to think any others, but those are the main ones that actually require a USB e-licenser, but the other ones can just simply run from a soft e-licenser, but they can also, many people that have a USB e-licenser will just choose to run it on the USB e-licenser as well. See, Graham mentions he almost feels guilty if he misses my live stream, so I'm honored for that, but we know it's late there as well, but we're just glad you can make it. And glad you're enjoying your CC 121. All right, so we see Kimura just says, still saving one day or day one, I'll be a Cubase Pro user. Just keep working at it, save money. It's, and you'll appreciate it more. once you get it. So, but at least you could get started, and when there are advantages and sales and promotions going on. So, you could take advantage of it like it's going on now. All right, so just see a question from Kolja in Belgium. Greg mentioned a Zoom meetup. What is that about? So, what we did kind of for like Christmas time, the last live stream before the holidays, we did a Zoom meetup, and I think everyone had a great time. So, after the last live stream of the month, which was this past Tuesday, we do kind of an abbreviated live stream for 2 hours, and then we have a Zoom session where everyone can meet and talk. And I really enjoy it, and I think other people do as well. And it's great, meeting people from all over the world. So I think it's really a great thing. So I'm glad we kind of started that as a tradition. And I just see, so if you need a special invitation for the Zoom meetup, so generally we just kind of post it in the actual meetup. But if you want to email me, like when we do, and usually about a week before, I'll have the Zoom link. And if you want to email me like about a week before our last live stream, I'd be happy to provide the link, but we provide it in the meeting right before as well, that information. And it's free for anyone to join. All right, going through some of the discussion. Thanks for all the great discussion. So I just see downloaded the demo of Cubase 11 and noticed that my SAC2K remote controller preset mapping is gone. So I think some of the ones are not being supported, but I think in all fairness, the SAC2K was probably a 20-year-old controller that hasn't been around for a long time. So instead of constantly worrying about doing quality assurance testing on it. Some of the older controllers didn't make it into version 11. We did have people that had Steinberg Houstons that kind of suffered the same fate, and we kind of complained, and we got them to put the Houston support back in. But I will mention about the SAC2K. So I think the Houston support, even though that's kind of the same time frame, they're kind of doing that in a non-supported, unofficial way. So, all right, we see Michael Pierce has made it back. See how we're doing great on time. Thanks again for all the wonderful questions. Okay, so we see Peter is mentioning with the track and region name. It says prefer not to have any text within the parenthesis. So let's say if I'll just do a new project here. Okay, and let's go ahead and just record some audio. Okay, so I think, often So let's say if we record another file, so we see that the name here is going to be the same. Let's go ahead and try just to import a quick audio file and see if that behaves differently. So when I come here, the file name and descriptions are identical. So okay, so you see from Jeff Sabelski, I read somewhere to set the cores to one less than you have. So my i5 with 6 cores, I set to 5 cores in the options tab. So I think this is with the Hallian or Hallian Sonic. So that is what's recommended, so that you'll have 1 core, that could be used just for Cubase or other tasks. So you're correct. That's what the documentation indicates. All right, so we see that there are CC 121s in stock available in the UK at Anderton's. So I like their guitar videos. If I was in the UK, I would go visit their store because I think they do some cool videos. Okay, reading through comments. So thanks for all the great discussion. Okay, so just see question. My window has changed when automating panning. Instead of a menu, it's showing as a single strip. Okay, so I'm not sure if this is like for a stereo track, but if it's for, if you're panning, and let me just kind of. Okay, my window has changed when automating panning. Instead of a menu, it's just showing a single strip. So if it's this, like, if we're on a stereo track, you could see your panning kind of separate, and there's 2 different panners. I'm not sure. I'll just see if this is it, but there's also a combined panner where you could do, add strength or width or narrowness to particular panning modes here that you set, or if you wanted to invert them just by going up or down. So you could do some cool stuff with that. So let me know, so maybe if it changed to just, so instead of a menu, it's just showing a single strip. So maybe it went to the balanced panner. So, but let me know if I'm misunderstanding. This is from Gearhead 66. So you see Michael Teams asking, Mark Rabin found a Houston controller for $499.50 on Reverb. So Houston was kind of an 8-channel, actually a 9-channel controller that Steinberg did, kind of a precursor to something like a Mackie control. All right, so just seeing more info from Gearhead 66. It says happens when I right click on a track. So just let me see. Okay, just let me see if I get all gearheads. So my windows changed when automating panning. Instead of a menu, it's showing in a single strip. So yeah, maybe for if you could give some more information, that would be helpful. All right, see Tim Weinheimer's just saying he loves the Cubase live streams. He's learning so much. All right, just finding my spot. Sorry. All right, so I just see from Chase Bethia. So I will kind of reach out to the marketing team at Yamaha about some of your live streams as well. So I've kind of passed it on to them, but I'll kind of pass it along again. Sorry if you haven't got a response from them. Okay, so you just see from okay, so my menu format changed. This is from Gearhead66. My menu format changed when right-clicking a track, showing a strip instead of a box window. So when I right click, so I wonder if maybe if it's like if these icons have changed here, try going into like your track controls settings. And here you could pick, for audio or for instrument, what exact controls are visible and which are hidden from view. But when I right click, So and you say it's showing a strip instead of a box window. So, try, and if you want to email me a picture, Gearhead66, you could send it to clubcubase at steinberg.de. We still have some time left in the live stream. We've about an hour left and we don't have too many questions that were mailed in. But if you want to email me at clubcubase at steinberg.de, I'd be happy to. If I saw what was going on, if you send a screenshot, I could probably help you out with that. Or if you just want to send an email, I could respond after the live stream. Okay, so we have a question from Michael Teens. And since he's so generous with ice cream, we have to answer. So silly question here. For some reason, my cursor line does not return to its last starting place. It was, but now, no, I must have hit a button somewhere. So it's probably going to, and the behavior can change, like depending on, so let's say if I start off here, and if I use like the numeric keypad and hit like, enter for play, and then if I hit 0 to stop, we could kind of change some of the behavior, so that will just kind of jump back. But this preference, and if you hit stop here, so there's a preference for this where you could go to under preferences to transport, and there's a return to start position on stop. So try to toggle that setting, and then as we hit stop, it will just automatically continue on from that point. All right, wonderful to see the tuba guy back. All right, so and he says, after a long time not being here, I'm happy to announce that I just got my master's degree in music pedagogy. Now plenty of time for Cubase. Congratulations on getting your master's. That's a huge undertaking, and it's wonderful to see you back. Thanks for stopping in to the live stream and saying hi, and congratulations again on an accomplishment. Happy for you. So we have a question: frequency EQ versus a traditional channel EQ. As for the pure EQ calculations, do they use the same algorithm? In other words, do they sound exactly the same with identical settings? So there are different algorithms, and even within the channel EQ, there are different algorithms here. So you could actually choose, so for each of the different band type, you have parametric 1 and parametric 2 that you could also have set up. And we do this for kind of project compatibility. I can always remember being at Elliot Shiner's house, and he just was remixed a bunch of Steely Dan stuff in 5.1, and he's like, if this EQ algorithm, and this is his favorite EQ in the whole world for all of his work, and he's just, a stunning engineer. And he's like, if this EQ algorithm ever changes, you guys are in trouble. So, we always kind of keep, like these types of things are like really important in design decisions, so that you could actually pick and choose, between different, you could always have the same parametric EQ sound, so that when you open up the project, it's going to sound the same as it was if it was created in 2000 or 2021. So they are different algorithms between them. Okay, so I'm just seeing some further discussion from Gearhead66. I realize it probably hasn't caught up to all of my comments. Right click directly on the track. So I'm not sure if it's the track or the event. Okay, so if if you're right clicking, if it's the toolbox here that you see, so, and if you are expecting to see the tools kind of like this, as opposed to this, you could hold down the Control or Command key to do this. If this for Gearhead 66, so I'm not sure if it's for the tools that you want to access, where maybe you expect to see this, but you're seeing this, and there is a preference to change the behavior. So if you go to tools, and you could see show toolbox on right click. So I'm not sure if it was on the track itself or on the event. So if you wanted to just be able to kind of toggle those between those two, just come over here to preferences and show toolbox on right click. But try holding down Control or Command. And if it's just the tools that have changed, like that. It's just that preference. All right, so we see just from Thermonuclear, the best and correct EQs is with maximum phase mode, like Fab Filter EQ. So one other thing, just in case you don't realize, but when you get to frequency, that the frequency is linear phase. So when you kind of come over here, each of the bands can be turned on and off for linear phase just by clicking on the little LIN icon here inside of frequency. You see, Graham is just mentioning he spends so much time in the discussions, he never gets to ask a question. So if you could always email one in if you think, oh, I had the perfect question, but didn't get a chance to ask it. You see Sable Winters. This is a great thing. Let's make a plan to invite at least 5 new creators to the next live stream deal. So we could do a, if you want, I think this could be interesting, Sable, and to others, and let me know what you think. If you wanted to invite your friends that maybe aren't running Cubase, and we could do a special kind of like Cubase translation, or we could kind of show unique things in Cubase, how it works for them. So if you want to, invite other people and maybe have them switch while we're doing the promotion, I think that could be an interesting thing. And I'd be willing to do that if you wanted to have a special day, maybe in a week or two, where we could just have to attract new users. So, or people are thinking of going to Steinberg. So, but I think that's a great idea, Sable. Thank you. All right, so I get 2 scoops of chocolate chip brownie ice cream. So I'll have 1 scoop for my son. So, all right, so we see Tim Weinheimer's saying he loves Steely Dan. All right, so I'm seeing just an email come in. Let me just see if it was the question. All right, so I think I got a picture. Let me take a quick look at it. Okay, so I see this isn't like the tools. So see add track. Okay, so I can see kind of the menu instead of going vertically is going horizontally. So let me just. So it's kind of like this, but it's so in the picture that Gearhead66 sent, it was all just kind of instead of going vertically here, it's going horizontally. And let me see if this is. Yeah, I can't say I've seen that before where that would be annoying. So, when what the picture is showing is when he right clicks that all of these options, instead of being vertical, are horizontal. But I don't know if there's, I mean, it seems like a typical menu choice. I would try to, out of curiosity, start the program and see if you could disable the current preferences. And you could do that by just holding down Alt Control Shift right after starting the program, or Command Option Shift if you're on Mac, and see if that makes a difference. That looks like kind of maybe a corrupted preference, but I don't think there is a setting to flip the menu horizontally. And if you're on Windows, maybe if it's in tablet mode or something, maybe. But I've never really seen like the little drop down menu go horizontal as opposed to vertical. So try that and let us know if you start it. And also let us know if that is if that's on every project or just that one particular project. And if you're on Windows, I closed my email program. If you're on Windows, see if you go to the Cubase preferences. So go to the Cubase preferences, and under General and a Windows platform, you won't see it on the Mac, but you can see Enable High DPI mode. See if you check that or uncheck that, if you toggle the settings on that, if that makes a difference. Right. And I probably mentioned this before, but Tim Weinheimer is saying he loves Steely Dan. So yeah, that was one of the joys, two joys of my career, is spending like a whole day with Donald Fagen in his apartment with him, just talking about music and stuff. And I also got to help do a new archival transfer of the whole Steely Dan catalog from the original 2-track masters. So the original 2-track masters in New York at Sony Mastering when they were doing it in Nuendo. So we got to transfer everything at 32-bit, 176.4K. So yeah, I could have a lot of really bad days at work and just think of those 2 days. All right, so just see question: is it possible to solo mode each frequency? So if you wanted to, like if you're in frequency plugin, you could come over here. One of the cool things is, if you wanted to come over here,
She said, I don't want no
anytime that
man
you're making an
who
adjustment,
just laid it right. Oh no. She was just looking.
you can hear only what you're affecting via the EQ.
She had to settle a score. She was just a
So as you're making the adjustments,
she'd never done
so that way you could isolate just the particular frequencies of that pretty easily. But I don't think that there's a particular solo function for each of the EQs as well. But you could use other there's other plugins that you could do that for. If you wanted to take this and run it through like a linear, like the Imager plugin. So here you could solo each range.
He'd regret his indiscretions. She was
So if you just kind of
teach him a lesson. Big white Russians and she
so if you wanted to isolate particular frequencies like that, you could do it. That's another method. Okay, so I just see from Mark Rabin, Greg wanted to toy with workspaces a bit to show insert send mixing console demo. So if you, I'll show you how to do that one more time in case you need it, Mark. So Mark had wanted to be able to switch between different views for something that doesn't have a keyboard shortcut. So if we wanted to, I'll just revert this quickly. So let's say if I wanted to switch between my inserts and my send view, so there unfortunately isn't a keyboard shortcut to switch between these, but you could create a workspace. So I will come over here. Let's say once I have it set to my inserts, I'll add a workspace, and we'll just call this inserts lower zone. And let's say I'll add a workspace to this. We'll call this, and these workspaces could be global or they could be based on the project. So global, you wouldn't have to set it up for each project as you do it. So this would probably be something. So let's say faders, lower zone. And let's set this to our sends. All right, so now once we've created these workspaces, I could just say, okay, let's look at our inserts. Let's look at our faders. And let's look at our sends. So you can see the faders and inserts and sends. Just so this way we could have these pre-configured window layouts that could be stored just like that. So you see Tim Weinheimer is a fan of Hey 19. Yeah, it was an interesting story. It was actually kind of written for Elliot Shiner when he was going through divorce and went on a date with a younger girl. So, all right. All right. All right, reading through more comments. Thanks for all the great questions. So we have a question. Are there any live looping workflows possible with Cubase, like playing some drums, dub over them with bass? So not like a traditional like guitar looper pedal, because we kind of would do everything, but you could easily record drums and then just add another track and record that, but it's not going to kind of merge them together. But if you wanted to separate onto different lanes. All right, so we just see that Gearhead66 says, "Yay, that worked." Greg, thank you so much. That was really hindering my workflow. That would be annoying if all my dialogue, all my menu windows opened up, horizontally. I can see that would be annoying. So, and we see that Gearhead66 is happy. So, good. See, Graham Witcher's favorite Steely Dan album is Asia, so that's mine too. All right, so we see, I think Gareth under the Hot Mess name is joined, so glad you can make it. No worries about being late. All right, so we see Norton Wade has been in and out, and he's falling into a flex arpeggio hole. So that's a good place to be. All right, so nice comment from Mark Rabin of gratitude, blessings, and appreciation, really. So I'm just glad that we're able to help, give you some new tips and tricks, and maybe a different approach. We see that Gareth is happy to see Pablo. All right, I think I may be near. All right, so I think I've reached the end of questions. We had a couple questions that were mailed in. I'll jump to that now. See how we're doing on time. Is that we're doing well? All right, so let me go find some of the questions that were sent in. Okay, this came up kind of on our live stream, but how to create a string layer with limited note ranges for each instrument. So we said we would show this on the live stream. Okay, so a lot of times when we look at Hallian Sonic SE, we could have, our different instruments that we'll see loaded up. So let's just load up all the instruments. For this example, I loaded a bunch of orchestral strings. All right. Okay, so now when I want to come over here, if we want to do something, if we go to the MIDI section, so let's say, and we want to have all of these on MIDI channel 1, you could see this range. And what this range will allow us to do is we could set up, I only want, we see people coming up with like really very inventive ways of layering sounds. But here I can say my low key for this particular instrument should be here. And I want this instrument to go in and only fit onto this range. So at this point, I could just say, let's take this range. So let's say, okay, this will be violin 1 and 2. Let's say a little bit of overlap. Let's take this. So we could filter out which particular notes are actually being responded to here. So we can say, okay, we want a little bit of overlap maybe with the viola, and we want cello to just only be in this particular range. And let's say my bass in this range. So this way, as we would play back, we could assign these all to the same MIDI channel. And as we work with this, we could have these automatically kind of layered up to switch between the different instruments depending upon the key. Now, something else that we could do is, let's say I want to add another instance of Hallian Sonic here. So you could set your different layers, but let's say I wanted to do something like, okay, I wanted an accordion and an organ patch. So I'll just come here. So I'm just going to type accordion. Or maybe not accordion. All right, let me just. Okay, so let's say we'll do a Latin accordion. Okay, so now I want it to have that accordion. And then if I wanted to just layer that particular accordion with a different sound. Let's see, not sure why we're not. Let's do a new project here quickly. Okay, so let's say we'll do just a Latin accordion sound. And I wanted that to be layered. And we could have all of the different instruments here be layered, and we could have these on the same MIDI channel. So let's say now I just wanted to add an organ. So now if we wanted to do some like creative layering of this within one instrument, we could just go to the MIDI and we could say, okay, when we play low velocities, this will only come in, the organ will only come in, or let's say the low velocity of the accordion will only come in at velocity levels right there. So as I just play softly, we hear just the organ. But as I play higher velocities, the accordion comes in. So, and at this point, let's say I wanted to add a string sound, like a string pad. So we'll just say string section. We'll do vertigo strings, make it interesting. Okay, so now instead of these all being on different MIDI channels, these could all be assigned to the same MIDI channel. And I can say I want the strings to be down an octave. So let's do just a more traditional string patch. So now so this way the strings could be an octave lower or an octave higher, and we could just say I only want the strings to come in on the mid-range notes. So you could have different controller assignments, but we could say the strings are only going to be in this particular frequency range. So I could just kind of come right over here. So as we play the strings, when I go up high, so that's how you could kind of set up different layers pretty effectively for, for different ranges to transpose, or at certain velocity levels to bring in particular instruments. Another question we had mailed in is, how can I delete some recent projects from the recent projects list? I found items in the hub removed from list, but when I hit that option, nothing happens. All right, so when we come over here, we get to go to our new project, and if we go to the hub, I could say I want to delete this project. And I think this was a bug initially in the 11.0 and 11.01 versions. But if I choose to delete that, we can see that, as we work on that, we could now delete the particular function. But it was an 11.02 that was resolved. So. All right. Okay, so we had a question. While working with any project containing audio, I seem to get this error. Real-time algorithm has been deactivated because pitch or stretch factor lies outside the limits of the current preset. Why was this caused, and how can I get rid of it? So anytime that we have audio in a particular project, I'll just jump over to this project here. You could have these assigned to different rhythms. So or different algorithms for real-time, time stretching, and pitch shifting. So if you want to select all the files, we could just adjust the time stretch. We could reassign a new time stretch algorithm for all of the files once we have it selected. Or if you want to go into the pool window, we could go directly over to the pool window and you'll see the algorithm set here. So if you select all of the files in the pool, we can now come over here and say, I want these all to be Elastic Pro tape. And now as we would extend this over, we can see that that would be the tape. So it's probably just on one of the older algorithms here. So just try switching the algorithms to the Elastic Pro tape, and how that might be. I think that you might be able to set this as a preference. So let's take a look where you might be able to set the particular algorithm, a default algorithm, as a preference. Let's see if it's maybe. You just scroll through some of the preferences here. Yeah, so you could say you see the real time is the time stretch tool algorithm, and then you have a default. So make sure that so try adjusting this algorithm here. So maybe you have this set. And if you're trying to do something that's, like that was 4 beats a minute and try to change it to 200 beats a minute, you might also get the message. If it's kind of like a real extreme change in the algorithm, just that particular real-time algorithm can't stretch in real time to handle it. All right, let's go back to our live questions. Thanks again for all the great questions. All right, let me just go through. All right. All right, so we have a question from Ryan Manuel Reyes. I'm trying to import a video, but the audio is sped up. How would I get the audio to match the project? So it probably sounds like I would probably go to my project settings, and you could do that from the project menu to project settings, or hit Shift plus S. And it probably sounds like a sample rate mismatch. So probably if it's going to be on a video file, try starting off with 48K as your sample rate, but it's probably just a sample rate mismatch. So if your sample rate is set to 44.1 and you want it to, the video is probably going to be 48K, try setting it to 48K and then importing it directly in. Okay, so we see from Paul C. Thanks so much for all your help. A question: I'm using Flux in Halion, and the arpeggio patches are not syncing with Groove Agent, so that's good. Give it a shot. All right, so I'll just do a little Groove Agent. Okay, so let's say I'll set my tempo to 104. And let's add a Halion. Let's see if I have Flux in here. Okay. All right, let me just. Probably Tale of Arps would have. All right, so let's come over here to the editor. And we'll go to the macro view of it. All right, so sometimes, you know, here we have this set to eighth notes, but let's say if I set it to, or eighth note triplets, so let's say if I set it to eighth notes. And I'll just go ahead and draw a note in. Just. Okay, so sometimes as you play, make sure that, you know, if you start the note off like out of time, that will make kind of, so let's say I just wanted to have this note. All right, and I'll just duplicate. Let's just have this follow the transport. Now, where this could get thrown off pretty easily is if you select all these notes and they start ever so slightly off beat. So let's say these will now have a start point of, or let me just take this. And I'll adjust kind of the start point for the different notes where these are maybe not quantized, because sometimes if it's a smaller note, so that, you know, so make sure that the notes that you're hitting are actually going to be, you know, quantized to being on the beat. But so if this is quantized here, I'll just duplicate this note. So I'll just hit Control or Command D, and then that seems to be in sync. And when you go to like the arpeggiator within Flux, you know, make sure if you have the swing in there, or let's say we do 16th notes. Make sure you have the swing set to kind of a neutral value, and it should sync up for you. But if there's a particular patch, Paul, just let us know. All right, so we see people like the layering inside of Hallian Sonic SE. All right, read through comments. So we just see a question: is it better to use less sounds? So I guess in general, some people can do very things, have things very focused with fewer sounds. Some people will layer lots of things together. So I think it could really depend upon the song. Like, probably if you listen to as a Black Eyed Peas, they're pretty good at, having everything being perfect and very minimalistic. And other people could just, layer things, and have just, pretty much, amazing textures that couldn't be achieved otherwise. So it could really depend upon the particular circumstance. All right. See, Sable Winters is giving out gifts as well. That's very generous of you. So we see that Gareth has made that the flux is, since it's a wavetable synth and capacitor, it's a flux capacitor. So Alan Silvestri would be proud of that logic. So. Okay, so we have a question. Guys, I have a problem, and I don't know if it's just me. When spotting the playhead with the range selection tool by clicking on event, there's a 1 second, sometimes 2 seconds delay. Okay, so let me just jump back to another project here. Okay, so when spotting the playhead with the range tool by clicking on event, there's a 1 second, sometimes 2 second delay. So I'm not sure when you say spotting. So if I want to just, let's say, select this particular range, then if you hit like Alt Option P, you could just kind of select that particular range. But sometimes if you're doing that, if you're jumping and you have a lot of plugins on your system, some of those plugin values may need to be reset. You can see if the behavior changes if you go to the bottom left-hand corner here and click on the constrained delay compensation and see if that changes the behavior, and that would indicate that's going to be kind of a latent plugin that could be causing that delay in the transport. Okay, so we have a question. I have downloaded libraries / plugins, but it seems they do not show up. I cannot use them in Hallian or in general. Cannot find them. It is saying that they are downloaded and registered. So if if it says it's registered, I'm assuming that you've gone through the Steinberg library manager and you're seeing that will show up here like for Hallian. So I'm not sure if it's sound sets or Hallian content. One thing that might help if it's not being seen is just to go into the pool window, or I'm sorry, go into the media bay. Sorry, so at the end of a long live stream. And go to your VST sound and just maybe right click, and then on the, if you'll probably see the content here, and then just right click and try to rescan the disk and see. But if you could let us know if it's like loop content or Hallian instruments and what Hallian instruments, that would be helpful. So we have a question. Can I run an external reverb as a comfort reverb without recording the signal? So once you have, if you go to your audio connections and we have an external reverb, you could have that configured, and we just need to send an audio in and output for your external reverb unit. So we can say, okay, let's go in. We're going to go out. Descend, we're going to go out from our audio interface and then into the reverb and then back into inputs of the return bus. So we can have that configured. Once we have that done, all you need to do is just come over here and just run it as an insert or a send, and that will automatically so you'll see it as an external plugin. So if you come over here, you can say, okay, now I'm going to run the reverb. You can measure the delay latency. So it will, have a little bit of, it will have some latency doing this, but you could definitely do that. And if you have a Steinberg interface, you may have the built-in reverb already that could be run in this way. That's going to be powered by the onboard DSP. All right, see if there's... Okay, so I just see from Volker, it says, I need a thing about a real song. Can you do this next time? So if you want to tell me what you want me to do with a real song, I'd be happy to. Let's see, I think I've reached the end of the questions. We'll see if there's any more questions that have come in, but maybe Volker, if you could clarify what you want to do. Okay, so we just see from Gaggy says, I have downloaded Iconica, T guitar, M guitar, etc., but I cannot find them in any way I've tried so far. Please help. Thanks. So, once you have those, so let's say we'll just take a look at the download installer. But they'll generally just kind of show up. Let's take a look at the download assistant. Just see if I can cancel the updates. All right. So let's come over here to, the VST instruments and plugins. Let's say, okay, we're good to T guitar or Iconica. So, when you do this, it will, so it should automatically, wherever you have those particular files, like it's going to be on my system. And you could see kind of your downloads here, but wherever you have those particular files, and I know you said it says it's registered, but try just to right click and open it, find the file, right click on it and open it in the Steinberg Library Manager, and try that for all of the different files. And that should make that correlation for you. All right, we'll see if there's any more. And I see that Volker about English isn't his first language. I need to think about a real song. And he's indicating it's difficult to mix a song. Yeah, so it's kind of every song could be different and present unique challenges. So, and please don't apologize. I'm sure that I can't speak your language as well as you could type in English. But let's see if there's any more questions that come in. If not, we have a holiday weekend starting. I think I'm the only person in my whole neighborhood that's actually working today. So I'm just seeing everyone else that's on vacation mode. So if we don't have another question come in, I'll wrap up a little early. And if we want to wish everyone a happy weekend, and if you're in the United States, that you will have a great 4th of July. And if you're in Canada, that you had a great Canada Day. All right, and we'll be doing another live stream starting on Tuesday at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, so the same time. You could submit questions in advance to clubcubase at steinberg.de. And I'll wait just maybe another 30 seconds, and we'll see if there's any last-minute questions that come in. And if not, we'll wrap up a couple minutes early. Thanks for all the wonderful questions. I hope that everyone has learned some new tips and tricks. Just seeing Volkers indicating frequency problems. All right, so I guess with that, we will go ahead and wrap up. Please, everyone, stay safe and healthy, and look forward to seeing everyone on Tuesday. Take care.